The silence in the council chamber was heavy, like the air before a storm. Ambassador Chen Wei stood alone at the center of the massive circular room, his small human frame dwarfed by the towering representatives of 7 alien civilizations. Above him, the curved ceiling displayed Earth in real time, a blue marble spinning peacefully below the orbital station. Chen had been Earth's representative for 15 years. He knew every species in this room. He had shared meals with them, learned their languages, and even called some of them friends. But today, those friends would not meet his eyes. The Kravax Prime Commander rose first. His scales gleamed red under the chamber lights, and his forearms gestured with military precision. He was nearly 3 meters tall, built like a creature designed for war. "Humanity has been part of this council for 15 standard years," he said, his voice rumbling like grinding stones. "In that time we have shared our technology, our knowledge, and our protection." Chen said nothing. He had learned long ago that silence was sometimes the best weapon in diplomacy. "Now we require something in return," the commander continued. "The galaxy faces a labor shortage. Mining operations, construction projects, agricultural development on frontier worlds. These tasks require workers, and humanity is numerous. You breed quickly, adapt well, and your physical structure suits many environments." A cold feeling spread through Chen's chest. He knew where this was going. The Luminar representative spoke next. She was a crystalline being, her body reflecting light in rainbow patterns. Her kind communicated through pulses of colored light as well as sound, and her voice had a musical quality that might have been beautiful in other circumstances. "We have calculated the numbers. Earth's population stands at 12 billion. We require 4,800 million of your people to be relocated to work facilities across council space." 4.8 billion, Chen said quietly. 40% of everyone on Earth. "The calculation is correct," confirmed the Jetari administrator. The insectoid being clicked its mandibles together. "Your species will hardly notice the loss. Humans reproduce at remarkable rates. The population will recover within 2 generations. Chen's hands clenched behind his back, hidden from view. 2 generations. They were talking about stealing nearly half of humanity like it meant nothing. "Like humans were cattle to be redistributed, what if we refuse?" Chen asked, though he already knew the answer. The Kravax commander's lips pulled back, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Then we will implement protocol reduction. Systematic orbital bombardment of major population centers until compliance is achieved. We estimate that after the loss of your top 20 cities, Earth's leadership will see reason." 20 cities. Beijing, New York, Tokyo, Mumbai, Lagos, London, Paris, Moscow, Seoul, Cairo. Billions of lives. Turned to ash to make a point. "We have done this before," the Luminar said, and there was something almost apologetic in her tone. 213 emerging civilizations have joined the council. All have contributed labor forces. This is simply how things work. Resistance is pointless and costly. Chen looked around the chamber. The other species, the ones who had not spoken, watched with expressions he could not read. Fear, pity, indifference? The Mithara, gaseous beings contained in crystalline suits, floated silently. The Voldrani, who looked almost like humans except for their silver skin and black eyes, studied their tablets. "How long do we have?" Chen asked. 30 standard days, the Jetari clicked. "We are not unreasonable. We understand you will need time to organize the selection and transport." Selection. As if choosing which half of humanity would be enslaved was a mere logistical problem. "And if we comply?" Chen asked carefully. "What guarantees do we have for the treatment of our people?" The commander waved a clawed hand dismissively. "They will be fed, housed, and given medical care sufficient to maintain work capability. Standard labor protocols. Many species have found the arrangement quite livable." Livable. Slavery with 3 meals a day was still slavery. Chen took a slow breath. He had been preparing for something like this since his 2nd year as ambassador. Not this exactly, but something. The council had always treated humanity as lesser beings, primitives lucky to be given a seat at the table. Earth's military was a joke to them. Human fusion drives versus their antimatter engines. Kinetic weapons versus their gravity manipulators. It was like comparing a stone axe to a nuclear bomb, except Earth had not been idle for 15 years. "I will bring this proposal to my government," Chen said, keeping his voice steady and neutral. "I cannot make this decision alone." "Of course," the Luminar said. Democracy. A charming human custom, but understand, Ambassador, the decision has already been made. We are simply informing you of reality. In 30 days, the first transport ships will arrive at Earth. They will be filled one way or another. The meeting ended. Chen walked through the station's corridors in a daze, his mind racing. Other council species passed him, some nodding and greeting, others ignoring him entirely. Did they know? Had they always known this was coming? He reached the human section of the station, passed through 3 security checkpoints, and entered his private office. Only when the door sealed behind him did he allow his carefully controlled expression to crack. He slammed his fist down on the desk, then immediately regretted it as pain shot through his hand. "Computer," he said. "Open encrypted channel authorization Chen Alpha 79. The screen flickered. After a moment, 5 faces appeared. The President of the United Nations, the Secretary General, the Chiefs of the Unified Earth Defense Force, the Head of Earth Intelligence. They made their move, Chen said simply. The President, a woman named Aisha Okoro, nodded grimly. "We've been monitoring." "How long?" 30 days. 4.8 billion people, or they start bombing cities. One of the military chiefs, Admiral Zhang, leaned forward. "Are we going with Prometheus?" Chen hesitated. Protocol Prometheus was Earth's deepest secret. 15 years of preparation. 15 years of smiling and nodding while secretly studying every weakness, every tactical vulnerability, every cultural blind spot of the Council species. 15 years of building weapons in hidden facilities on Mars, on Luna, in the asteroid belt. Weapons the Council did not know about because they had never bothered to look. Why would they? Earth was primitive. Earth was harmless. "We knew this day would come," the President said softly. "We hoped it would not, but we knew. The question is, are we ready?" Chen thought about his years on the station. The Kravaks were brilliant military strategists but rigidly hierarchical. Cut off the head and the body would freeze. The Luminar had made their computer system so complex and unhackable that they had never considered someone might approach hacking from a completely different angle. The Jetari were efficient administrators but terrible at adapting to unexpected situations, and all of them, every single Council species, had underestimated humanity. "Yes," Chen said. "We're ready. Activate Prometheus, and may whatever gods are listening forgive us for what comes next." The President nodded. "All teams are authorized. Begin Phase 1 immediately." The screen went dark. Chen sat alone in his office looking out at the stars. In 30 days everything would change. The Council thought they were dealing with a frightened, primitive species that would submit like all the others. The Galaxy Council never expected Earth to strike back. But they were about to learn a very hard lesson about humanity. When you corner a weaker creature, sometimes it rolls over, sometimes it begs for mercy, and sometimes, if you have made a terrible miscalculation, it tears out your throat. Chen smiled, but there was no humor in it. 30 days, he whispered to the stars. "We will be ready." The orbital shipyards above Earth had never been so busy. Massive vessels took shape in the construction frames, their hulls gleaming under the harsh sunlight. From the Council observation platform, Kravaks monitors watched with satisfaction as humanity scrambled to meet the deadline. "They are building the transport ships on schedule," reported a junior Kravaks officer to his commander. 47 vessels, each capable of carrying 100 million humans in stasis. The primitives are actually cooperating. What the Kravaks did not see were the hidden layers beneath those hulls. What looked like simple cargo holds were actually armored battle stations. What appeared to be stasis pods contained weapons that Earth had spent 15 years developing. What seemed like primitive fusion reactors held power cores that the Council had never imagined possible. Captain Sarah Okonkwo stood in the real bridge of the UNS Defiance, hidden 3 decks below the fake bridge that Council inspectors had approved. She was 42 years old, born in Lagos, trained at the new Unified Earth Military Academy on Mars. She had spent 10 years preparing for this mission, knowing it might come. Hoping it would not, but preparing nonetheless. "Status report," she said crisply. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Park, pulled up a holographic display. "All 47 ships are on schedule. The Council thinks we are loading civilian volunteers. Actually, we have 16,000 Special Forces troops, 8,000 engineers, and 4,000 intelligence operatives per ship. Total combat personnel, 1.3 million spread across Council space." Sarah nodded. Each volunteer had said goodbye to their families on live broadcasts that were transmitted across Earth and to Council worlds. Tearful farewells. Children crying for their parents, elderly grandparents being led onto ships with bowed heads. The images were designed to make the council species feel secure, superior, perhaps even a little guilty. Every single tear had been fake. Every single volunteer was a trained soldier. "What about the weapon systems?" Sarah asked. Her weapons officer, Commander Johnson, grinned. "The Council's shielding is designed to stop high-energy plasma, antimatter, and gravitational weapons. They have never seen our quantum disruption torpedoes. In simulations, their shields do not even register the weapons until impact. It is like bringing a laser to stop a thrown rock." "And the cyber warfare teams?" Lieutenant Park's expression grew more serious. "Earth intelligence has been mapping Council networks for 12 years. The Luminar think their quantum encryption is unbreakable because they built it using one mathematical approach. We have been studying 17 different approaches. When we hit them, their entire communication grid will go dark for at least 6 hours, maybe permanently." Sarah walked to the viewport. Below, Earth turned slowly. Home. 7 billion people down there living their lives, working, loving, dreaming. They did not know how close they had come to destruction. They did not know that half of them had been scheduled for slavery, and they would never know if everything went according to plan. On the council station, Ambassador Chen played his role perfectly. He met with council representatives daily, discussing logistics and timelines. He apologized for delays. He asked for technical assistance. He acted like a defeated man trying his best to comply with an impossible demand. In his private quarters, he met with a very different sort of visitor. Prism Through Water was a young luminar, barely 40 standard years old. She worked as a junior scientist in the Council's Xenobiology division. She had been studying human culture and had become fascinated by Earth's literature, particularly the concept of tragedy. Now she sat across from Chen, her crystalline body flickering with nervous purple light. "Something is wrong," she said in her musical voice. "The numbers do not make sense. You are building 47 ships, but you only need 42 based on the population requirement. Your construction materials show stress ratings far beyond what is needed for simple transport. And your volunteers?" She paused, colors swirling. "They walk like soldiers. I have studied your military through historical footage. The way they move, the way they position themselves, even in civilian clothing. These are not farmers and factory workers." Chen studied her carefully. "Why are you telling me this? Why not report it to your superiors?" Prism Through Water dimmed to a soft blue, the color of sadness in luminar communication. "Because I accessed the restricted historical files. 213 civilizations. That is what the commander said. But I found records of 274 first contacts. 61 species are listed as extinct. Administrative errors. Calculation mistakes. Protocol reductions that went too far." She looked at Chen with eyes that were multifaceted crystals, impossible to read but somehow conveying deep emotion. "My people were not always part of the council. 3,000 years ago we were conquered. We were the labor force. We suffered for 5 centuries before we earned full status, and then we did to others what was done to us. I do not want to be part of that cycle anymore." Chen made a decision that could doom or save everything. "We are not going to comply," he said quietly. "In 22 days we are going to fight back. And if you stay on this station, you will be considered an enemy." Prism Through Water flashed bright white, the color of shock. Then slowly, carefully, she pulsed green. "Agreement. Tell me how I can help." Across Council space, Earth's ships moved into position. The Council had designated labor planets where the human cargo would be delivered. Each ship was routed through different sectors, spreading out across the galaxy. The Council saw this as efficient distribution. They did not see it for what it really was: a strategic deployment of military assets to strike 47 targets simultaneously. On Mars, in facilities buried kilometers below the surface, the final weapons were being loaded onto stealth drones. These were the insurance policy, the absolute last resort. Relativistic kinetic missiles, each carrying the mass of a small asteroid and accelerated to 90% of light speed. If Earth was destroyed, these weapons would automatically launch at every Council homeworld. Mutual assured destruction. The Council thought humans were too primitive for such weapons. They were wrong. Admiral Zhang coordinated from the Unified Earth Defense Force headquarters in Geneva. Holographic displays showed every ship, every asset, every agent Earth had deployed over 15 years of secret preparation. It was beautiful and terrifying. One mistake, one early detection, and 4.8 billion people would die in orbital bombardment. All teams report ready, his aide announced. We are at day 22, 8 days to deadline. Move to phase 2, Zhang ordered. Begin the final positioning, and send a message to all ships. 3 words. Remember our home. On the Defiant, Sarah received the message. She gathered her officers and crew. 1,200 people who had volunteered to be the tip of the spear. 1,200 people who might not see Earth again. In 8 days, she said, her voice carrying through the ship's communication system. We will do something that has never been done before. We will fight back against an empire that has enslaved hundreds of worlds. They think we are weak. They think we are primitive. They think we will submit like all the others. She paused, looking at the faces around her, young and old from every nation on Earth united in purpose. They are about to learn what happens when you threaten humanity. They are about to learn that we do not go quietly. We do not bow. We do not break. And when we are cornered, we do not just fight. We win. The crew erupted in silent determination. No cheers, no shouts. They were too disciplined for that. But Sarah could see it in their eyes. The council had made a terrible mistake. They had given Earth 30 days to prepare. They had assumed humanity would spend that time in despair and panic. Instead, Earth had spent it sharpening its teeth. Back on the council station, the Kravax commander reviewed the progress reports and felt satisfied. The humans are complying better than expected. Perhaps they are smarter than we thought. They recognize the futility of resistance. Next to him, a Zhetari administrator clicked in agreement. 8 more days and the matter will be resolved. Earth will take its proper place as a labor provider, and we can move forward with expansion plans. Neither of them noticed Ambassador Chen walking past, his face carefully neutral. Neither of them saw the slight smile he allowed himself once he was out of sight. Neither of them suspected that in 8 days their entire civilization would be fighting for its survival. The countdown continued. Earth held its breath, and the council slept peacefully, confident in their power, certain of their superiority. They never expected Earth to strike back. But the storm was coming, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Day 30 arrived like any other day across council space. The Kravax homeworld of Krapthor saw its 3 suns rise over gleaming military complexes. The Luminar crystal cities on Lumen Prime refracted morning light into rainbow cascades. The Zhetari hive cities on Jet buzzed with another day of efficient administration. Everything was normal. Everything was peaceful. At exactly Oro 600 Universal Standard Time, everything changed. The UNS Defiance dropped its disguise 3,000 kilometers above the Kravax primary shipyards. Captain Sarah Okonkwo sat in her command chair as alert klaxons began screaming across enemy stations. All weapons, she said calmly. You are free to engage. The Defiance's hull split open in 40 places. What the Kravax had thought were cargo bay doors were actually missile tubes. Quantum disruption torpedoes launched in waves, each one invisible to council sensors until the moment of impact. The torpedoes did not carry explosives. They did not need to. They simply made the atomic bonds in matter unstable for 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough. The first torpedo hit a battlecruiser under construction. For 3 seconds, the carefully forged metal remembered that it was just atoms held together by forces that could be disrupted. The ship crumbled like sand. 17 more torpedoes followed. 17 more capital ships dissolved into clouds of debris. Direct hit on primary construction dock, reported Lieutenant Park. Enemy shields never activated. They did not register the weapons as threats. Sarah allowed herself a tight smile. Second wave. Target their command center. Aboard the Kravax defense station, Commander Rekthar watched in frozen horror as his entire fleet was destroyed in 90 seconds. Return fire, he roared. Destroy that human vessel. His weapons officers frantically worked their controls. Plasma cannons swiveled. Antimatter missiles armed. Gravity wells formed to crush the human ship. Every weapon the Kravax had perfected over 10,000 years of warfare deployed simultaneously. The Defiance's shields held. Barely. Warning lights flashed across Sarah's bridge. Forward shields at 40%, called out her engineer. That was just their first salvo. Evasive pattern Echo 7, Sarah ordered. Launch the Ravens. From the Defiance's lower decks, 200 small drones deployed. Each was barely 3 meters long. too small for Council targeting systems to track effectively. Each carried a single quantum torpedo, and each was piloted by an AI that had one purpose: get close and detonate. The Ravens swarmed. The Kravaks tried to stop them with point defense lasers, but the drones were too many, too fast, too small. They reached the defense station and attached themselves to critical junctions. Then they detonated simultaneously. The station did not explode. It simply stopped being solid matter for 3 seconds. When those 3 seconds ended, there was nothing left but an expanding cloud of gas. Similar scenes played out across 47 Council worlds simultaneously. On Lumen Prime, human cyber warfare teams activated viruses that had been quietly embedded in Luminar computer systems for 12 years. Every communication relay, every data hub, every quantum processor went dark at the same moment. The Luminar, who had relied on their technology for everything, were suddenly blind and mute. On Zet, the human ships deployed biological agents specifically designed for Jaitari physiology. Not lethal, but incapacitating, a pheromone that disrupted their hive coordination, making them confused and unable to organize. Within hours, the Jaitari military chain of command had collapsed into chaos. At the Council station above Earth, Ambassador Chen stood in the main chamber surrounded by guards. The Council representatives had summoned him for an emergency session. They had just received reports from their homeworlds. Reports of attacks. Reports of disasters. Reports that made no sense because Earth was primitive and helpless. "What have you done?" the Kravaks commander roared, his forearms grabbing Chen and lifting him off the ground. "Your ships were supposed to be transports. Your people were supposed to be laborers." Chen looked the commander directly in the eyes. "You threatened to kill half my species," he said quietly. "Did you think we would just accept that? Did you really think we were that weak?" "You cannot win," hissed the Jaitari administrator. "We have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. You have 47 vessels and delusions of victory." "We have something better," Chen replied. "We have desperation and ingenuity. We have 15 years of studying your every weakness while you ignored us. And we have this." He pressed a button on the device hidden in his sleeve. Throughout the Council station, human agents who had been posing as maintenance workers, food service staff, and low-level administrators activated their weapons. The station was huge, housing 10,000 Council species. But the humans had mapped every corridor, every security checkpoint, every critical system. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in 30 seconds later, casting everything in red emergency lighting. By then, human special forces teams had seized the main reactor, the communication hub, and the bridge. The entire takeover took 4 minutes. Chen stood alone now in the Council chamber, the guards neutralized by precisely applied force. "This station is now under human control," he announced. "All Council representatives are to be confined to quarters. No one will be harmed if you comply." The Luminar representative, prism through water, flashed green in agreement and relief. Several others, smaller species who had always been afraid of the Council's dominant powers, followed her lead. But the Kravaks commander lunged for Chen with murder in his eyes. He never reached him. Captain Maria Reyes stepped from the shadows, her stun weapon discharging. The commander collapsed, his nervous system overloaded. "Station secured, Ambassador," she reported. Chen touched his communication device. "Admiral Zhang, the Council station is ours." Proceeding to Phase 3. Back on Earth, Zhang received the message and felt a weight lift from his chest. Phase 1 had been the simultaneous strikes. Phase 2 had been the station seizure. Phase 3 was the gamble. "Send the transmission," he ordered. All Council worlds, all frequencies. Across the galaxy, every screen, every communication device, every emergency broadcast system activated simultaneously. The face that appeared was not military or threatening. It was Ambassador Chen, looking tired and sad but determined. "People of the Galactic Council," he began. "My name is Chen Wei, representative of Earth. 29 days ago, your leadership demanded that we surrender half our population to slavery. They threatened to destroy our cities if we refused. We are here to tell you that humanity refuses." The broadcast continued. Chen displayed evidence that Prism Through Water had provided. Historical records of 61 extinct species. Records of civilizations destroyed not for rebellion, but for calculation errors and administrative convenience. Records showing that the Council's leadership had built an empire on slavery and maintained it through fear. "We did not start this war," Chen said. But we will finish it. Not through conquest, but through liberation.
Any world that wishes to be free, any species that has suffered under council rule, we offer you an alliance.
Join us, fight with us, or simply stand aside and let us do what should have been done millennia ago. The broadcast ended. For a long moment, silence filled the galaxy. Then responses began coming in. Not from the council leadership, but from smaller species. Suppressed populations, enslaved worlds. 17 civilizations declared independence in the first hour, 32 more in the second hour. The council's empire was fracturing. On Kravthor, the surviving Kravax military leadership gathered an emergency session. Their fleet was crippled but not destroyed. They still had ground forces, orbital defenses, and planet-based weapons. This is not over, declared High Commander Zethrak. Rally all remaining forces. We strike at Earth directly. If we destroy their homeworld, the rebellion collapses. He dispatched 300 warships toward the Saul system. It was the largest fleet ever assembled, powerful enough to crack a planet. The journey would take 12 days at maximum speed. 12 days for humanity to tremble and despair. 12 days to regret their defiance. Sarah received the intelligence from Earth's deep space sensors. 300 ships incoming. Her task force had 47 vessels, and most were damaged from the initial strikes. The odds were impossible. Well, she said to her crew, they said Earth was primitive. Let us show them what primitive really means. She set course for home, trailing the Kravax fleet. Behind her, the other human ships did the same. They had struck the first blow. They had shaken the council to its core. But the real battle was still to come. The real test of whether humanity could survive against an enemy that outnumbered and outgunned them. The real test of whether defiance was courage or suicide. Earth waited. 300 enemy warships approached, and humanity prepared to defend its home with everything it had, knowing that this time there would be no tricks, no surprises, no clever tactics. This time it would be pure warfare, and only one species would survive. The countdown to the Battle of Saul had begun. The Kravax fleet moved through space like a wave of death. 300 warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering perfected over millennia. High Commander Zethrak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conqueror's Fang, and watched the countdown display. 9 days until they reached Earth. 9 days until humanity learned the price of defiance. Status of the human vessels, he demanded. His tactical officer consulted the displays. They are following us, Commander. 47 ships maintaining a distance of 2 million kilometers. They are too damaged from the initial strikes to engage effectively. Zethrak's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Let them follow. Let them watch as we turn their world to glass. Perhaps some will survive to tell the story of what happens when primitives challenge their betters. What Zethrak did not know was that Sarah Okonkwo was not following to watch. She was following to gather data. Every sensor on the human fleet was trained on the Kravax ships, analyzing their formations, their power signatures, their communication patterns. Everything they learned was transmitted instantly to Earth through quantum channels the Council had never detected. Earth was preparing. In Geneva, Admiral Zhang coordinated the defense with representatives from every nation. The holographic display showed the solar system transformed into a fortress. Mars had launched every defensive satellite it could produce. The asteroid belt had been seeded with mines. Luna's hidden weapons platforms were now active and visible. Earth itself was surrounded by 3 rings of defense stations, each armed with humanity's most powerful weapons. We have numerical superiority in defensive positions, Zhang's tactical officer reported, but their ships are more powerful. Our simulations show a 73% chance of breakthrough to Earth orbit. Then we change the equation, Zhang replied. He opened a channel to the science division. Dr. Kaur, is the prototype ready? Dr. Amara Kaur appeared on screen from a facility deep beneath the Himalayas. She looked exhausted but excited. The temporal displacement drive is functional. We have only one working prototype. The theory is solid but untested at combat scale. Will it work? Zhang asked bluntly. It should create a localized time dilation field. Anything inside the field will experience time at 1/10 normal speed from an outside perspective. In practical terms, we can make 10 seconds pass for us while only 1 second passes for the enemy. But the power requirements are massive. We can only maintain it for maybe 5 minutes of objective time. 5 minutes might be enough, Zhang said. Install it on the Defiance. Sarah will know how to use it. 6 days out from Earth, the Kravax fleet received unexpected visitors. Ships began dropping out of faster-than-light travel around them. Not human ships. These were vessels from 17 different species, the ones who had declared independence after Chen's broadcast. Their ships were outdated, their weapons inferior to Kravax military technology, but there were hundreds of them. A transmission came through. The speaker was a Voldrani captain, her silver skin gleaming in her ship's lighting. "High Commander Zethrak," she said formally. "I am Captain Silvara of the Free Voldrani Fleet. We are here to inform you that your passage through our newly claimed territory is denied." "Turn back or be engaged," Zethrak laughed, a harsh sound like tearing metal. "You dare threaten us with your salvage fleet? We have maintained order in this galaxy for 10,000 years. We will not be stopped by rebels and primitives." "Then you will be stopped by this," Silvera replied. Her ships opened fire. The battle was brief and brutal. The Free Fleet was destroyed in 30 minutes, but they accomplished their goal. The Kravax fleet was slowed, forced to engage, forced to expend ammunition and energy. When the last rebel ship exploded, Zethrak looked at his casualty reports. 12 Kravax vessels damaged, 3 destroyed, and they had used 20% of their long-range missiles. Insignificant, he declared, but doubt crept into his mind. Continue to Earth, maximum speed. On Earth, people knew the battle was coming. There was no hiding it now. The government had been honest with the population. An enemy fleet was approaching. They might not survive. Everyone had a choice: flee to the underground shelters or stay and fight. 7 billion people made their choice. Less than 1 million chose to flee. The rest prepared for war. Factory workers retrofitted civilian ships with weapons. Scientists worked around the clock on new defensive technologies. Ordinary people volunteered for civil defense forces, knowing their training was minimal and their chances of survival low. But they remembered what the Council had demanded: half of humanity enslaved, half of everyone they loved taken away. That memory turned fear into determination. Chen watched from the captured Council station as his homeworld bristled with weapons. He thought about the peaceful Earth he had left 15 years ago. That Earth was gone now, transformed by necessity into a fortress. He wondered if they could ever go back to peace or if this war had changed humanity forever. Then he pushed the thought aside. First, they had to survive. Philosophy could wait. 4 days from Earth, the Kravax fleet detected something impossible. Human ships were appearing from nowhere. Not through conventional faster-than-light travel, but through points in space that simply opened like doors, wormholes. The Council had theoretical knowledge of wormhole technology, but had never managed to make it practical. The energy requirements were too massive, the calculations too complex. But here were human ships, dozens of them, appearing through stable wormholes as if they were routine. How? Zethrak demanded. How do they have this technology? His science officer consulted the data frantically. "Commander, they are not using exotic matter to stabilize the wormholes. They are using quantum entanglement in a configuration I have never seen. The mathematics are elegant but completely different from our approach. They solved it from another direction entirely. It was Earth's secret advantage. While the Council had spent millennia perfecting antimatter and gravity manipulation, humanity had taken 15 years to focus on quantum mechanics and relativistic physics. Different problems, different solutions, different technologies. The Council had never considered that there might be other paths to the same destination. The new human ships were not warships. They were transports bringing reinforcements and supplies from hidden facilities throughout the solar system. Earth's total fleet now numbered 200 defensive vessels plus the orbital platforms. Still outnumbered but no longer hopelessly outmatched. 1 day from Earth, Zethrak received a transmission that made his blood run cold. It was from his homeworld. Kravthor was under attack by freed slave populations. The Empire was collapsing. Half the Council species were suing for peace. The Jaitari had withdrawn all their forces to protect their hive worlds. Only the Kravax remained committed to destroying Earth. "It does not matter," Zethrak told his officers, trying to sound confident. "We will break them. We will show the galaxy that defiance leads only to death." But privately, he wondered, if they won this battle but the Empire had already fallen, what exactly were they fighting for? The Battle of Saul began at dawn over the Pacific Ocean. The Kravax fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their weapons already charging. Earth's defense platforms opened fire immediately. The sky lit up with energy beams, missile contrails, and the flash of exploding ships. It was beautiful and terrible, like watching the end of the world painted in fire. Sarah brought the Defiance forward, the prototype temporal drive humming beneath her feet.
All ships, she transmitted on the human fleet channel.
Remember what we are fighting for. Remember who we are protecting. Today we show them that Earth does not break. Today we show them that humanity does not kneel. The response came back from 200 ships and 7 billion people. No words, just a simple acknowledgement tone. But in that tone was everything. Determination, defiance, love for their world and everyone on it. The willingness to die so that others might live free. Sarah smiled. Activate temporal drive. Let us teach these old warlords a new lesson. The Defiance vanished from normal time. To the Kravax sensors, it simply stopped existing. But Sarah and her crew were still there, moving through time at 1/10 normal speed. From their perspective, the Kravax ships were moving like statues. Their weapon beams crawled through space at 1/10 of light speed. Their missiles drifted like balloons. Sarah had 5 minutes of subjective time, which meant 50 seconds of real time. 50 seconds to change everything. All weapons free, she ordered. Fire everything we have. The Defiance unleashed its entire arsenal in those 5 minutes. Every quantum torpedo, every kinetic missile, every directed energy weapon. From the Kravax perspective, the human ship appeared out of nowhere and fired 200 weapons in the span of a single second. There was no time to react, no time to dodge, no time to do anything but die. 40 Kravax ships were destroyed before they even understood what had happened. The temporal drive burned out. Its power cells drained completely, but the damage was done. The Kravax formation was shattered. Their morale was broken, and High Commander Zethrak finally understood a truth that should have been obvious from the beginning. Humanity had never been primitive. They had simply been underestimated. 6 months after the Battle of Saul, Ambassador Chen Wei stood before the largest gathering in galactic history. The Grand Assembly Hall had been constructed in neutral space, equidistant from all major civilizations. Where the old council chamber had held 7 species in positions of power, this hall held 327 species as equals. Chen was older now. The stress of war had aged him visibly, adding gray to his hair and lines to his face. He carried a cane, not for show but because a piece of shrapnel during the station seizure had damaged his leg. He limped to the central podium and the vast chamber fell silent. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds waited to hear what humanity wanted. Conquest? Revenge? Domination? Chen cleared his throat and began. 6 months ago, we were told to surrender half our people or watch our world burn. We chose a third option. We chose to fight, not for conquest, not for empire, but for the simple right to exist as free beings. Today we stand victorious. The old council has fallen. Their fleets are broken. Their leaders await judgment. And the question before us now is simple: what comes next? He paused, looking across the assembled species. The Kravax survivors sat in a segregated section, guarded but not imprisoned. The Luminar had split into 2 factions, reformists led by Prism Through Water and traditionalists who still believed in their superiority. The smaller species, the ones who had been oppressed for generations, watched with hope and fear in equal measure. Earth could demand reparations, Chen continued. We could claim territory. We could impose our will on the galaxy the way the Council once did. We have the military strength. Our technology has proven superior in critical ways. We could build an empire if we chose. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Species who had fought beside humanity relaxed slightly. Species who had remained neutral tensed, preparing for the worst. Chen smiled sadly. But that is not who we are. That is not what we fought for. We fought so that no species would ever again live in fear of enslavement, so that no civilization would be erased because of administrative convenience, so that the strong could not simply take what they wanted from the weak. He activated the holographic display behind him. It showed a proposed structure for galactic governance. No council of elite species. Instead, a true assembly where every civilization had a voice weighted by population but also by ethical conduct. A system of checks and balances to prevent any one species from dominating, term limits for all leadership positions, mandatory rotation of power, and most importantly, a charter of fundamental rights that applied to every sentient being in the galaxy. This is what Earth proposes, Chen said. Not rule by the strongest, but cooperation among equals. Not an empire, but a true galactic community. We call it the Galactic Assembly, and we invite every species to join as founding members. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species cheered. Others argued. The Kravax representatives stood as one, their commander stepping forward. Zethrak had survived the Battle of Saul, though barely. He was missing one arm, and his scales were scarred from plasma burns. "You would let us join?" he asked, his voice carrying a mix of disbelief and suspicion. "After everything we did?" Chen met his eyes. "We would, but not without conditions. Your military will be reduced to defensive forces only. Your government must undergo democratic reforms, and you must make reparations to the species you enslaved, not through forced labor, but through technology transfer, resources, and formal apologies. These terms are non-negotiable." Zethrak stood silent for a long moment. The proud warrior species brought low by primitives they had dismissed as insignificant. Finally, he lowered his head in a gesture of submission that no Kravax had made in 10,000 years. "We accept. We have learned a costly lesson. Strength without wisdom is just tyranny, and tyranny always falls eventually." One by one, the other species accepted the terms. Some eagerly, some reluctantly, but all recognized reality. The old order was dead. Either they joined the new one or they faced isolation and irrelevance. By the end of the session, 312 species had signed the Galactic Assembly Charter. Only 15 refused isolationist civilizations who wanted no part of galactic politics. Earth respected their choice and guaranteed their borders would be protected. The celebration that night was subdued. Too many had died for there to be true joy. Captain Sarah Okonkwo attended briefly, accepting medals and honors with quiet dignity. But she left early, unable to bear the festivities when she could still see the faces of the 40,000 crew members who had died under her command. She returned to her quarters and sat alone, staring at the list of names scrolling across her screen. 40,000 people who had trusted her, 40,000 families who would never see their loved ones again. The victory felt hollow. There was a knock on her door. Chen entered, uninvited but welcome. He sat beside her without speaking. Two people who had carried impossible burdens and survived. "They are calling us heroes," Sarah said quietly. "But I just feel tired." "Heroes are just people who survived when others did not," Chen replied. "The real heroes are in that list you are reading. The ones who gave everything so that others could be free." Sarah nodded. "What happens now?" "We won the war, but can we win the peace?" "I do not know," Chen admitted. "Building is always harder than destroying, but we have to try. We owe it to them." He gestured at her screen at the names of the fallen. 10 years later, the Galactic Assembly had transformed the galaxy. Technology sharing had lifted dozens of species out of poverty. Joint research projects had made breakthroughs in medicine, energy production, and space travel. The old council species had been rehabilitated, their governments reformed, their people learning to live as equals rather than masters. It was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still resentments, still species who struggled with the transition. But it was better. Measurably, significantly better. Chen was 82 years old now, finishing his final term as first speaker of the assembly. He had served 3 times the maximum allowed and was ready to retire. His successor would be a Voldrani, then a Luminar after that, then a representative from one of the smaller species. Power would rotate, preventing any single civilization from entrenching itself. It was messy and inefficient compared to the old council's streamlined autocracy, but it was fair, and fairness was worth the inefficiency. Sarah had retired after the war, unable to command ships anymore. Too many ghosts. She had returned to Earth and opened a school, teaching young people about military history and the cost of war, not to glorify combat but to ensure they understood what they were choosing if they volunteered for military service. Her students loved her, though they found her stern and demanding. They did not know that her standards were born from seeing too many young people die because they were not prepared. On this particular day, Chen had invited Sarah to join him for a special event. A new species had made first contact, their ship approaching the Assembly's diplomatic station with a mixture of hope and fear. They were called the Tenari, and they had been watching galactic events for decades, trying to decide if it was safe to introduce themselves. Chen and Sarah greeted the Tenari delegation together, 2 humans who had become legends. The Tenari ambassador, A being that looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard bowed respectfully. "We have studied your history," she said in carefully practiced standard galactic. "We know of the war. We know of the old council's crimes. We must ask before we join your assembly, what guarantee do we have that you will not become like them? That the cycle will not repeat?" Chen smiled. "No guarantee," he said honestly. "Power corrupts. We know this. That is why we built in safeguards, term limits, rotation, checks and balances. But ultimately, the only real protection is vigilance. Every generation must choose to maintain these systems. Every species must commit to holding leaders accountable. We cannot guarantee the future. We can only build the best foundation possible and trust those who come after us to maintain it," Sarah added. "And if we do fail, if we do become tyrants, then we hope someone will do to us what we did to the council. Strike back, resist, refuse to accept oppression. That is the real lesson. Not that Earth is special, but that no one should ever bow to tyranny, not even if the tyrant is us." The Tanari ambassador considered this. Then she signed the assembly charter. "We join you," she said. "Not because you are perfect, but because you are honest about your imperfections. That is more than the old council ever was." That evening, Chen and Sarah sat on the observation deck of the diplomatic station, watching stars wheel overhead. Chen would retire next month. Sarah would return to Earth and her students. Their part in history was done. "Do you think it will last?" Sarah asked. "Everything we built?" Chen was quiet for a long time. "I think it will last until people forget why we built it. Until the generation that remembers the council's tyranny is gone. Then it will be tested. Maybe it survives that test. Maybe it does not. But we gave them a chance. That is all we could do." Far beyond the galaxy's rim, deep space monitoring stations detected something unusual. A signal, powerful and ancient, originating from empty space between galaxies. It was not a natural phenomenon. It was artificial, deliberate, and impossibly old.